All right, we're at our elderly tech guy is giving us advice now on how to title our podcast episode.
I like this advice.
That wasn't a confident thumbs up. Did you see it? It was like,
Yeah.
It was real slow.
I saw it.
And then it was half cocked.
I saw.
And he's still holding it up. Look.
Are you sure we're live? But I do love how now when we're debating a topic, we can get the final verdict from the elder.
Yeah.
Right?
Deacon.
Yeah. No, he's a parish. Parish James. We can get the final verdict from Parish James, and that way it just settles it all. And we don't have to leave here confused or feeling some sort of way, when he lays down the verdict.
That's what it is.
That's just what it is.
What's the parish do?
Well, that's what it's so funny you said that because I was sitting here thinking I am a little bit sorry he's got to start off at parish. That's pretty sorry, but
That low class.
it sounds so good. Parish
He
James.
took the trash out last week.
Well, that's kind of why I deemed him that, but it just sounds good.
Chili's been working here for 5 years, ain't never took the trash out.
Well, he did a good job taking the trash out. When Chad does it, he puts it in the back of my truck.
I have taken the trash out.
Yeah, Chili
Have you
quite
really?
regularly takes
Oh,
the
yeah.
trash out.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah,
You
he
wouldn't-
does.
The Pope is taking the trash
You
out?
wouldn't know that.
No, that's screwed up, man.
Well, he's big on recycling. He likes to make sure cardboard
You
boxes
got to quit
go
taking
to
that
the-
trash
No,
out,
no,
Bubba.
I'm not going to contribute to climate change. Not
Good
going to do it.
night.
But Parish James just sounds so good. Parish James. I think even whenever you're become a bishop, we'll still call you Parish James.
It's like his name now.
Yeah.
His first name's Parish.
The listeners love it, too. I noticed
I bet.
our Wednesday podcast where we came out against the Catholics got a lot of commentary on it. I haven't read all the comments yet, but I noticed it was pretty hot.
I heard we lost quite a few followers.
Yeah.
Did we really?
I mean, according to their statements on the chat,
We lost some subscribers on
some
that.
stuff said they packed their stuff up and ain't coming back.
Yeah, I get those comments quite regularly. That's all right. Well, we'll be here when you decide to come back. We'll be here, Lord willing. Week in and week out. This is Monday meeting, and we are in Matthew chapter 13 this week. Still,
This has been our longest chapter to get through.
This is our fourth one?
I think so.
our fourth what? In Matthew 13, this is our fourth Monday meeting in Matthew 13.
I think it is.
It's at least the third. I think it's the fourth.
Well, I do want to also announce that Cornbread has still got it. I thought he didn't have it no more, but he pulled through the other morning, Sunday morning.
Hunting ability.
Yeah, he still got it.
Well, I think
Now-
what he was talking about.
Now I don't hunt on Sunday mornings. All right.
You kind of.
So I don't know,
Contributed.
I don't know how y'all feel about what y'all did hunting on Sunday morning, killing things
on Shabbat.
on Sunday morning.
You mean you don't hunt turkeys on Sunday mornings? You'll hunt a squirrel on a Sunday.
Well, that don't count. Small game don't count as hunting. But, anyways, y'all got it done Sunday morning.
Yeah.
Thanks to me, of course.
Thank you,
When,
Chad,
when I
for
say you
everything.
still got it, I mean you could aim and shoot.
Thank you, Chad.
At least you still got that. But y'all are welcome for getting y'all those turkeys, all right?
Thank you, Chad, for waking up at 8 o'clock and helping us.
You're welcome. I don't know if we're even allowed to tell that full story or not because
No, you're not.
It might be illegal what we did. I'm not sure.
It's slightly.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
It's not really, but someone could twist it into a
Nothing's
manner.
really illegal.
No, it's not illegal.
Well, we're going to get to talk about that today a little bit. What is our, hopefully we get there, what is our responsibility as the church in terms, everybody asks this question, what are we supposed to do as the church when the government, the state, is doing all this crazy wazoo stuff? How is the church supposed to react to it? Right? Everybody asks that question. And we see an example of that in 14 if we get there, but we're still in 13. Maybe we'll get
we're
to 14.
not getting to 14.
Well, most of my notes are in 14, but
Well, that's ridiculous.
yeah. So
You're just going to skate past the rest of 13 because you're tired of being there?
apparently,
I promise we won't get to 14.
Apparently, Cornbread and the parish have been discussing the parables of the treasure buried in a field, and Parrish said that Cornbread is apparently going to have a lot to say about this parable.
Don't let him bait you. Negative.
So-
It's quite the opposite.
Did y'all have a conversation
Yes,
about it?
we did have a conversation.
So this is in verse 44. The kingdom of heaven is like unto a treasure hidden in a field, the which when a man hath found, he hides it, and for joy he goes and sells all he has and buys the field.
Oh, yeah. You could talk a long time about that.
So what was the conversation y'all had about this, Cornbread?
I asked James if he
Paris
understood
James?
it. Yeah, Paris James, I'm sorry. And he said, "Ooh, that's a hard one there." And I said, "Well, I agree. Because Jesus bought and paid for everything. So that's where I'm getting hung up on the whole thing there at the end. I'm not really processing this thing. I'm stumbled on it.
It's an easy parable, man.
Well, bust it off for me. Bust it off.
No, I want to hear what you guys have to say first. I mean, it's not a hard parable to understand.
Bust it.
What do you got, Chill, man?
Well, you can take that one verse in so many different directions. It can make you think of so many different things, like, what the guy, he decided to not just take what he had found. I mean, presumably he could have taken it. Maybe not. Maybe it was too much to carry off. But he went and actually, decided to.
Or it was illegal.
Yeah, I mean, decided to buy it, right? Like, who was the owner of the field? Like, the owner of the field actually possessed or had the ability to possess the treasure, but wasn't aware of what he had or what he could have had, right?
Seems a little deceiving, doesn't it?
What, like what the guy did?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you could definitely take it that way. Like, you could almost look at it like he had integrity because he didn't just take it. He went and actually bought the field, but he didn't tell the guy. But does he have to tell the guy? I don't think that's the point. I think the point is that there was a man that didn't know what he had or what he had available to him, and went on his life, had it all this time, and then didn't ever really possess it. And then there was a guy who, if you read on too, the next parable, like this,
They kind of go hand in hand.
yeah, this guy wasn't even looking for the treasure, yet he found it and ended up possessing it. And then the next parable, someone was looking for, a treasure and did find it too. It's just interesting. Like, I don't know how you're going to get away from the Reformed theology coming up in this one, Corn, because
I'm about to lock down.
because like you have three different people in those two parables. You have somebody looking for treasure and finds it, somebody not even looking for nothing but stumbles on it and finds it, and then somebody who had it right there in front of their face and never found it. It's interesting.
So how does this tie into the conversation around Reformed theology?
Well, I'm so tired of using that buzzword, but it just ties into salvation. It ties into, because it's literally talking about salvation, right? It's talking about the kingdom of heaven and possessing it. So it appears when you read those two that it's pretty plain to see that there will be all types. There will be people that, maybe it's a commentary on the Pharisees too. Whenever he said, the owner of the field may be like the Pharisees. They know all this and they have it right in front of them, but they never actually possess it. Like the Pharisees would own the land that has the treasure on it. Like they got it from top to bottom. They literally own the land. They're they should get it. They see it theoretically, but they don't really ever have it. And then I think there's people who genuinely find like Christ chooses that, like they receive salvation without ever looking for it. I mean, I don't think you were looking for, I think that's kind of your I mean, you weren't seeking it out.
Yeah.
That just kind of
Well,
a series of events started your like you.
Well, I personally, in my experience, I don't believe the seeking can even begin until the man is regenerated.
Well,
right?
you know what I
And that's
mean,
the
like-
case I've made before. Regeneration precedes salvation.
But then jumping ahead to the parable of the pearls or whatever you want to call it. I mean, that guy was looking for it.
He was a merchant.
Yeah, looking for a valuable pearl, and then he did find it. I don't know. I mean, he was certainly looking for it. Maybe he couldn't have even been searching for it without prompting of the Holy Spirit, but he didn't just stumble on it. He was looking for it. So that's three different situations there, all with different results. I think it gives insight onto how that all happens, or how it happens differently.
Yeah.
You know, not everybody has the same experience, and I don't think we really understand why that is. You know, why do some people seem to just stumble on it? Why do some people search for a while and then they find it? And
Why can some people never
some
get
people
it?
can never find it, even though it's right in front of them.
Dang, you went-
Don't Bubba. It's
look,
easy, remember?
Well, yeah, but he just took it deep. I mean, it is so nice to have a biblical scholar on the podcast. It really is. I mean, if you look at that's some of the comments I did read on last week's podcast were thanking Chili. Many comments were thanking Chili.
Last week?
Yeah, last Wednesday. Yeah,
People told me in person, dang, Chili had. He
he is on
that.
fire, man. The Lord is on him, dude.
I was dressed as
You
the
know,
Pope.
there was a distinct transition in Chile, in my mind, when he got married. I think he realized his responsibility as the leader of his family, both physically and spiritually, in this world and in the world to come. And
Physically started getting fit.
the Lord has been strengthening Chile. He really has. It's amazing, man. What do you got on these, Blake?
I don't know much about it.
See, well,
I mean, it could go many different. Well, there's the common thing, like, all right, have we talked about like what the kingdom of heaven? Like, what is he trying to explain with these? The kingdom of heaven.
We'll see. Now you want to piss off another sect of Christianity, Jehovah's Witness. That's their whole thing, the kingdom, and there is great disparity in what people really think that the kingdom is, and what that means, and how many people will be a part of the kingdom. Like not everybody agrees that the kingdom of heaven is just, you know, the heaven that all people saved will get to go experience in the afterlife. Some believe the kingdom of heaven is a small, like that maybe exists, but then there's a small, really small group of people that experience what the real kingdom is. Like it's like a hierarchy in heaven. Like it's odd.
I would say like the kingdom is here now.
That's
Zach
what
Dasher's.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Zach's exposition or explanation of that. The kingdom of God is here on earth right now. And the kingdom of God is here by way of the indwelling of the Holy Spirit in the body of Christ. So the kingdom is made up of people. Yeah.
Yeah. Essentially, you believe that when you are saved on earth, you've entered the kingdom right then. You don't wait to enter the kingdom of heaven when you die.
Yes, that's my understanding of it.
Yeah.
And so Jesus is telling them the kingdom of heaven is like, so he's saying the way that people in my kingdom operate is this. So would he be talking about salvation? Would he be saying this is how you get into the kingdom? Or is he saying the kingdom of heaven, how we operate is like this, you see a treasure in a field and you see something valuable and you sell everything you got to get that one thing that you cherish or value so highly? Or is he I mean, we can draw conclusions to other things, but
Chili's tying it because he's talking about he's tying it to salvation because that's the entrance point into the kingdom, right? So that's how he's tying it, right?
Yeah, I see that.
So my understanding of these two parables, I told Cornbread, is simple, and for me it really is simple. I didn't go near as deep into thinking about the different aspects of characters that are represented in these parables and all that stuff as Chili did. It's simple to me because this is and has been my life experience. When I received the gift of salvation and entered into the kingdom of heaven, from that point to this day, it is the most valuable gift that I have ever or could ever receive, ever. In this life, in eternity, there's nothing is compared to it. No possession, no thing, no experience, nothing that happens to me in this life can compare in terms of value to being a part of the kingdom of God here on this earth and for eternity with God. And to me, that was my biggest takeaway from it, is of like, these parables are just representing how this gift of salvation and being a part of God's kingdom here on earth and in eternity is nothing can compare with it in value. Yeah. No possession, nothing that you own. Like it's worth it. It is of such high value. It would be worth throwing everything else away to possess it.
Well, they did.
They did. Yeah. And
that's the commonality between the two, is one was searching for it, one wasn't, but it ultimately cost them both everything.
Yeah. I was reading some commentary from my man R.C. Sproul the other day, and he was talking about his experience being a minister, right? And he said he was also a teacher. I forget what school he taught at, but he was a college professor. And he said so many of his students would come through and they would be all excited about their career in ministry and how they're going into this career that's, going to be all about helping others and all this stuff. And he said he had to bring them back down to earth before they graduated and make sure that he told them, your life in ministry is a throwaway life. You are throwing your life away for this thing, right? You will never become wealthy. You will never become, you're never going to be at the top in terms of the world, what the world views as the top, right? You're throwing everything away to go and do this. I just want you to understand that, because this excitement that you have about this career path, that you're taking is going to wane very quickly, and you need to understand what it is that you're getting into. So that's my biggest takeaway from these two parables. It's just expressing the ultimate value of being a part of the kingdom.
I think it's less about us and our way in and more about that we have this thing that we don't really even realize the value of, but God does. And like the treasure is salvation, and we are the one that has it but don't realize the value of it. But God does and sees us and sends his son who pays it all to cover that. I think it's less about us and more about God and Jesus.
That's
personally.
That was my thinking in the discussion with your dad.
There's
nothing to expound on myself. Like Blake said when he first said, is it about your salvation and what it cost you to get it? Like, I feel Jesus has paid for all that. I think
So you're saying here, Corn, that the man who sells all he has to purchase the field is representative of Christ?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think so.
No, I don't think so either, but it could be.
It's what Warren Wiersbe says that.
Who?
Warren Wiersbe.
I disagree with Warren.
I don't know Warren.
No, I think I don't think the man that, or both the men, the man in the field and the merchant, selling. I mean, I think selling everything they have is to represent what you literally have to do if you're going to follow Christ and enter the kingdom of heaven. I mean, it's telling you that what it's worth is everything you have.
That's what I would have. That's the way that I have interpreted it too.
And
Chili.
what it's going to cost you is giving up everything that you have. I don't know that it means that you won't have anything. It doesn't mean that like you won't have anything. It doesn't say that they have nothing, but it says they sold all that he had and bought the pearl and bought the field. So now they have that's not saying you're going to live your life as a homeless vagrant.
Yeah.
Once you've entered but you had to be willing to give up everything. You had to. You're not holding on to anything of this world anymore.
Well, that makes it seem like you can do something to get your salvation, though. If
Why?
you can sell everything to buy it, then it's like, all right, well, if I give up everything, then I got my salvation.
I think
it's
just
a
expressing
metaphor.
Necessity.
It's a metaphor.
And so I see. I'm not saying that you guys are wrong, right? Because I see what you're saying now, Cornbread. I didn't see it at first at all, but
I didn't explain it very well.
I see what you're saying. Now he had found one pearl. So the pearl, you guys are saying, is the body of believers, Christ's elect, right? The people whom he died for, the kingdom of God on earth. He who found the pearl. You're interpreting that as the Lord looking at the body of Christ and saying, these people, this church is precious to me, so then I am going to purchase it and give all, which is his son, Jesus, on the cross, to purchase this pearl, which you guys are saying represents the church.
Right.
That's an odd interpretation. Me and Chili think you're wrong. Warren Rearsby thinks you're right.
Yeah, I just don't. I mean,
Hold on.
Hold on. All right. Yeah. Okay. We're getting
even split here.
Yeah, we're even split here. So we need confirmation on the proper interpretation from Paris James. Paris James. Thumbs up or thumbs down, the pearl represents the church. Dang! Thumbs up! Chili, we were wrong, man.
The balance has just been tipped.
Good night.
I'm wondering if does that go back to your continuity theory?
Yeah,
because
the birds are evil.
Because of the other
Good
parables, like with the mustard seed and the leaven, like saying that every time he says the kingdom of heaven is like, he then uses the object as the church.
What do you
Know that, but it
sounded good to him. Look, you guys in the comments, let us know what your interpretation of these two parables are, because obviously we've got the parish. He laid down the law up in here, but I'm still very conflicted about it.
I mean, earlier, like with the parable of the sower, when anyone hears the word of the kingdom and doesn't, I mean, I don't know. There's a little bit of consistency with him talking about. Anyway.
I agree, and that's what leads me to the interpretation that you and I have, Shelley, is where we have to look at the preceding verses, and where who's he talking to? What's the audience? What's the points that he's trying to make? So, that's that on those guys. Wanted to see what you guys say on that. And then we move into the next parable of the dragnet. It's kind of doubling down on the wheat and the tares almost, right?
Right.
Kind of doubling down on that. One of the things that we see, though, in both the interpretation of the wheat and the tares and also at the end of the parable of the dragnet is something that is not really preached very often, and that is the certainty of judgment, right? And so there will be a judgment in verse 50. Well, actually, in verse 49, so it shall be at the end of the world, the angels shall come forth and sever the wicked from among the just, and shall cast them into the furnace of fire. There shall be wailing and gnashing of teeth. There will be a judgment. Leave room for God's wrath, right? We can be sure of that. Anything else on the Dragnet?
Something that I took away from it is just, if you, whether this is meant this way or not, if you're the one casting your net, so to speak, metaphorically, like to not be so specific with sorting the fish as you're casting your net, and when you bring them in, God will do the sorting. And so you might say, oh, this person is not worth my time sharing this with them, and I shouldn't do this over here, and I should, you should have some discernment with how you spend your time, but it's not really up to you to pick the good fish from the bad fish, so to speak.
Well, what about the parable? What about, not the parable, but what about the account of Jesus going back to his hometown? And his hometown, Nazareth, right? He goes back to his hometown. We don't know why he goes back there. A little bit earlier in Matthew, his mom and his brothers had come looking for him, wanting to talk to him. So maybe he goes back to his hometown to see what on earth did y'all have to say to me. I don't know. We don't know why he went back there. But he went back there, and he enters the synagogue, and he teaches. And the people responded, "Is this not the carpenter's son? Is not his mother called Mary, and his brethren James and Joseph maybe, and Simon and Judas, and his sisters? Are they not all with us? Whence then has this man all these things?" They basically said, we've known this fella from a child here. He's a carpenter. We know his family. All this and that. What gives him the right to come in here and teach the way that he's teaching? And they were actually offended by him being there. And Jesus said to them, "A prophet is not without honor save in his own country and in his own house." And he didn't do many mighty works there because of their unbelief. It's almost like their familiarity with Jesus prior to him beginning his overt ministry on earth, their familiarity with him, basically, they disdained him for actually becoming something in his ministry, right? I don't know.
It's easy to do that. I myself, people I've known that probably are doing some awesome things or had done awesome things, I thought to myself, hey, man, and I'm not making an excuse for them. Dang, I remember when this joker got a DUI. You know? I mean, just those little thoughts, kind of like, is he faking it or is he for real?
Yeah.
That's made me think of that when I was reading this. And people's done that to me, from things of my past. I know they have.
Y'all got anything else on this? Prophet has no honor.
No, I think that's pretty easily interpreted. I think they were just too familiar with him, that they couldn't look at him aside from how they knew him as a kid and growing up and his family.
But now he didn't do any like he didn't have none of those sins or whatever. I'm saying that it's easy for us to do with someone else, which makes it strange in and of itself there.
Yeah, he seems just ordinary because of his upbringing and them being around him.
Right.
And say, well, you wasn't that way as a kid. What makes you think you are now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's a pretty sharp transition from a carpenter in a little small town to
The Messiah.
yeah, to now becoming this great, what the world saw him as, a great teacher, right? Possessing all this wisdom and have multitudes following him, right? It's like that's a hard shift.
Which is interesting. Like, how old was Jesus remember when they lost him for 2 or 3 days?
Yeah.
Was he 12 or 13?
Yeah.
And his mom and they come to find him, and he was in the synagogue, and he was like, well, why are you looking for me? Don't you know I'm about my Father's business?
Yeah.
Like you would think that he was doing that there where he was from. That was 12, 13 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the key to understanding their reaction is like, where then did this man get all these things? Is regardless of maybe he as a kid they thought he was like, whoa, this dude is different.
Oh, that's a good point.
But still, there was no explanation for how, unless he's the Messiah, which they didn't think.
Yeah.
There's no explanation for how, even though he was different, he was maybe they thought, wild in what he could do and say and everything. What he was coming at them now with, they were like, we literally know your dad. He's a carpenter. Like, we know what you've been told. You've been told the same stuff we have. Like, there's literally no way you know all this and have all this wisdom. Like, you haven't. Other people that didn't grow up around him, he could come to them. They don't know his background. They don't know. He may have went on a mystical journey in the wilderness, and got enlightened and came and showed them all these things. They're like, no, dude, you grew up hammering wood. Like, you don't know this stuff. Like, you've done something weird where you're just faking all this and like acting like somebody you're not. And, and in a sense, they were right. They were correct to think that, unless he's the Messiah.
Yeah.
And, well, he was, so like, they just, it'd be like if, Blake came to you, you grew up with him, you've lived 30 years, and then all of a sudden he came saying all this wazoo crap that he had learned, and you're like, where'd you learn that? You didn't learn that anywhere. You haven't even left.
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about? You know what I mean?
It does make sense, yeah. I told y'all we'd get through 13.
I knew we would. Bro.
Yeah, dang.
I knew we would.
And then 14, this is
This is where you want to talk about government.
yeah, this is
That's really what he wanted to talk about today. Let's just finish this.
That's kind of why we went through 13 so fast.
this is everybody's. But dude, so many people ask this question almost every time I do the Q&A on Monday on Truck Talk, and I ask people for questions, and this is very commonly a question. How are we supposed to react to the evil government, right? The state. When the state is no longer functioning in the way that God has ordained them to function. And I've been back and forth and all over the place with this, I sometimes I get real outspoken about it, and then other times I'm just like, there ain't look, I'm done. Whatever they're doing, whatever the state's doing, I'm through with it. I'm not even paying attention to it, right? But we have a little bit of insight, at least in John the Baptist, his reaction to the essentially wicked government leaders of Rome. We have an example of the Herod, I think Antipas. There were a couple of these Herods, right? But
Yeah, they're brothers.
yeah, he ruled over a area there, Herod did, and he had taken his brother's wife as his wife, and John called him out for it.
Yeah, he was married at the time too. So
He was. I read that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was married. Yeah.
He was a tetrarch, so he was over Galilee and somewhere else. So he had a quarter of what Herod the Great left him. But he went to Rome, already married. Philip, his brother, had the wife, Herodias, and he liked her, so he wanted to marry her. Got a divorce from his firstin', married her, and John the Baptist was like, no.
Yeah, it's unlawful for you to have your brother's wife. And that I also was reading upon this because the other accounts of the gospel expound upon this situation more greatly in detail. And this woman was also not only his brother's wife, but she was the daughter of one of the other brothers. So this was not only him taking his brother's wife, but it was also an act of incest. And we think, good night. What is going on with that, man? Like, that's an evil government right there. But look, man, this ain't no different than what these cats are doing in our government right now. I mean, all this stuff with the what's the guy and girl? Epstein people and all this, man. Look, man, these jokers. Did y'all see where that lady, one of the main accusers of Epstein, just suicided herself? Did y'all see that?
I mean,
which
one? There's a lot.
There was a lady that had been used by Jeffrey Epstein and gasoline and all them, and so she was coming out against them, right? She had filed lawsuits against them and all this stuff. She just suicided herself.
Dang.
Yeah.
What was her name?
I'd have to look it up. I was reading about it on Friday. Ain't it funny how everybody involved with that suicides themselves?
It is.
Yeah.
Well, that's something else, ain't it?
Killed her.
Yeah. So, you know what, man? Anyways, our government in the United States wants to act like they are. We have this idea of separation between church and state, right? Our government wants to act like they are sovereign, independent from God. John calls this fella out. It just got me thinking about this separation of church and state. How are we supposed to interact with the state? And so I made a few notes here. The state is established by God and given the power of the sword. We read that in the book of Romans, right? To promote justice and righteousness in the land. Essentially, the state's job is to provide law and order and to provide a space to where the church can flourish, right? And the church is to act as the conscience of the state and of the culture. And so John calls this leader out. But one of the interesting things is he doesn't physically try to mount a resistance to overthrow the government, right? And I think that's what we as Americans have a question about. Like, should we mount a resistance to overthrow the state when the state becomes evil? Well, John doesn't do that. He just calls them out, and they end up locking him up and killing him. I don't know. How do you guys think we should react? I mean, surely you've asked yourself this question during COVID.
Yeah.
Well, I think I don't know how we should react, but I do know, or I think strongly that however you react, it needs to be with a thought process and a posture of we're not coming out of this with the perfect solution. Like, I don't believe, even if you want to take it to where you should overthrow the government, like, when we did it the first time in 1776, that was the correct thing to do. I don't think that should have been done or should be done again with the idea that it's now good.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Like that you will never achieve that. I mean, you'll never will. Like, we're talking about the same government when you're talking about the U.S. government right now that was established then. It's devolved to this.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Like that worse than before. I mean, by all accounts, So that's just what's inevitably going to happen. Now, that's not to say you shouldn't make changes and make it as good as you can at the time. But I think those discussions of overthrowing the government is just too often threaded with the idea that we're the ones who know how to do this right, and we're going to set it straight, and then it'll be good to go if we can pull this off. And that's just not reality. That's what I think. It's not to say that shouldn't be done. You shouldn't, it's not to say lay down and let evil run rampant just because you can't make it perfect. But it's like too many times it's threaded with, if we could just get Donald Trump in there, it's good. Mm-hmm. Or if we could just get Chad Rite to be the warlord, it's good. It's like, no, man, it ain't going to work. So that's where I've come to. And then if you wanted to make it more about submitting to authority, we want to talk around in circles about that so many times. I've went back and forth a bunch like you have, like you said you had, but ultimately that can be just about boiled down to submit to authority until you're asked to do something or participate in something that goes directly against.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, and then you could argue that even just participating in anything with this government is doing that, but like,
yeah, I agree with that too.
But there's no way around that. Mm-hmm. I don't believe there's anything. You're never going to be under a perfectly good leadership that's not doing anything wrong, that by submitting to it in totality, you won't be participating in something that you disagree with. You can't get away from that. All you can do is, if the king, or the president, whatever, has a specific thing that you are to do, or you're supposed to bow down and worship to this, is say no. That's all you can do.
Yeah.
But if you pay taxes to this government, and it goes to fund an abortion or something, it's like, well, you shouldn't pay taxes. You're never going to get around that. I don't believe that's a possibility to avoid contributing to something in that manner. So I think you just need to make it simple and say, if I'm ever asked directly to do this, that, no. And that's when I'll reject authority. But until then, whatever is in place, you kind of have to submit to that extent.
That's what the Bible says.
Pretty
all
much.
accounts you read.
Yeah.
I mean, here,
it's pretty much that simple.
John the Baptist just told him, hey, that ain't going to fly.
Yeah.
Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego said, nah, we're not going to bow down to that.
They were paying their taxes that,
Yeah, they were doing,
Well,
participating
we
in
even
the
have
whole.
an example of where, they tried to entrap Jesus with the taxation thing.
Yeah.
And he told Peter, go find a coin in a fish mouth down there, and he brought it up there and paid his taxes.
Yeah.
He did, didn't he, Dad? So yeah, I think that's spot on. But it is our, I think it is our responsibility to rebuke evil within the state.
Yeah.
I think that's what I get from this. And the only reason it's worth bringing up is because I think so many Christians and especially pastors are hesitant to engage in this job as the voice of the church in culture. They are so hesitant to engage in this from the pulpit or publicly, right? They don't want to ruffle any feathers. They don't want to engage culture on any level of politics, right? That's why we saw the vast majority of leaders, pastors and leaders, lay down the last, 2020, 2021, they just laid down, man.
Yeah.
When the state said you can't gather anymore, They said, "Oh, Roger that." They just laid down because they don't want to engage in that. We don't want to engage. We're I mean, cowards essentially.
Do you think it's like odd that John the Baptist had the ear of Herod, like that he would say that and it would get to Herod enough that it would tick him off?
I think John the Baptist was a big deal.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a prophet.
And it says that later. I mean, he was afraid to even do it because of the multitudes that
After
revered him.
400, Israel hadn't had a prophet in over 400 years, and here John shows up.
Yeah, he wanted to kill him when he heard it, but he was afraid to do it and chose not to then.
So he had the ear of Herod to be able to rebuke him in what he was doing, but then you contrast that to today. Like, who is it that's going to call out Donald Trump for doing whatever he's like? Who's calling out the government today? If that's what we see and that's what we're saying, like, we should rebuke this evil when we see it. This isn't talking about among culture. I mean, you should do that, but this is talking about the leader of the nation.
Right.
Who has the ear to do that?
Well,
really, the only people is the people that's aligned with them.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think there's not a lot of people are doing that, or maybe would do it. But you can rattle off a bunch of names that if they said something publicly, he would hear it.
Yeah, but they're not, the people that do what I'm saying aren't doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
You
Because look what happened when John did it.
Yeah. I mean, every time
He got locked up and killed.
every time Joe Rogan says the cranes his neck to the left, they report it all over all the news stations. If he came out hard against Donald, said, like, actually rebuked in this manner that we're talking about, it would get heard.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
So it's our responsibility to do that as the body of Christ, as the church. Both the state and the church have been instituted by God to serve as ministers of God under the authority of God, right? And so when the state gets outside the boundaries of the law of God, it is the duty of the church to rebuke the state in this manner, right? And Chili laid that out pretty well just a minute ago.
How do you understand the separation of church and state?
So I guess the simplest understanding for me is that the government is not to mandate a specific religion.
Yeah.
The government is not to say this is...
Because you can't fully separate it. Like, a government's laws and the structure of everything is deeply intertwined in, well, pick one, religion.
Yeah, exactly.
It's going to be.
Exactly.
So, like, the term separation of church and state is almost just a non-starter. Like, it is inherently intertwined. So, but I would say I believe in the separation of church and state, but I guess what I mean by that is simply don't mandate, a certain religion, but the code and the law of that country. You go look at all the Muslim countries. I mean, Islamic countries.
Yeah.
I mean, it's deeply intertwined.
Yep, it is.
You can't really avoid that. I mean, I don't believe the United States is what many mean by a Christian nation, but it is. I mean, it's a Judeo-Christian country. Like, it was founded and established on that set of, you know what I mean? Like, you're never going to avoid that. It's just a unique thing. Because, I mean, all of these governments for all of time like this were, I mean, it was intertwined the same way, Yeah,
I mean, government was the Almighty's idea.
Yeah.
He established government in the early days. Again, to promote justice and righteousness in the land so that the church could flourish. Right?
And don't you think that's why there's government, even though, like, people like us inherently hate it, is because the opposite is just anarchy?
Yeah, there has to be some form.
I mean, it's like the worst government in some sense is better than pure anarchy, because it's some sort of order.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. That's just one way to look at it.
Well, that's what I wanted to take away from that. And then the last thing we'll talk about today starts in verse 14. When Jesus, finishing up, when Jesus heard about the murder of John the Baptist, he heads out. He departed by a ship into a deserted place apart, possibly to mourn the loss of John.
Yeah.
But when people heard it, they followed him on foot out of the cities. And when Jesus went forth, he saw the great multitude, and he was moved with compassion toward them, and he healed their sick. And I thought about this. I was like, if that was the case, that Jesus departed to go be alone to mourn the loss of his friend John the Baptist, because John and Jesus were close. And then he gets out and he sees all these people done followed him over there. I just like to think about what my response would have been. These son of a guns, I can't get away from them. I just want to go be alone. One of my buddies was murdered. I just want to mourn that loss. I can't get away from these people. But Jesus, the Son of God, was moved with compassion toward them and healed their sick. He, again, puts his self aside and is moved with compassion toward them.
He puts people over everything.
Yeah.
Right.
And if you look, like, you wasn't supposed to touch a leper.
Yeah.
And what did he do?
Yeah.
Touch the leper. I mean, just all throughout Old Testament law, there were all these things that you weren't supposed to do with people, and Jesus did that because he was prioritizing people over the law. He was prioritizing people over his desire to mourn.
His well-being, I mean.
Yeah.
Which, on the cross, I mean.
Yeah. That's why all commandments can be summed up in this: love God and love people. We forget that a lot about loving people. We think, it ain't that. I love God. That's good enough. But you see how much he loved people.
And then he goes on to perform one of the only 2 miracles that are recorded in all 4 gospel accounts. It's this one and the resurrection are the only 2 miracles that are recorded succinctly in all 4 gospel accounts. This is a big deal right here, this miracle, the feeding of the 5,000.
Well, what do you classify as a miracle? I mean, he did a lot more than that.
He's saying this is the only 2 that's in all 4 gospels.
Oh.
Yeah. Sorry about the
Not
confusion.
the only 2.
I was like, what?
Over all
Yeah,
4.
no, that's specifically recorded in all 4 gospel accounts. Because this is a big deal right here. This ain't never been seen right here. He literally breaks his own law of nature. Have you guys ever heard of the law of mass conservation? I know you have, Chili. You're a learned man. It means that matter, all matter, is finite. It can't be created nor destroyed. In other words, the matter that exists is here. It cannot be completely destroyed, and no extra matter can be created. That's a law of science. Right? That's just the way that nature works. It makes pretty good sense to me. You ever seen anything pop out of thin air?
Well, who knows? He may not have popped it out of thin air. There may be a big chunk of fish missing from the ocean that he just and put it right here. I don't know how he did it.
We don't know how he did it.
Doesn't really matter how he did it.
But it seems like he created something out of nothing.
Well, we know he can do that.
Done it before. Got a good track record.
Actually, whatever was already here, he had already created out of nothing. So
Okay. You're exactly right. I mean, that's where I went with this. That's where I went with this. Have you ever thought about a time when there was nothing? You understand
Quite a lot,
you
but-
understand you can't get to the bottom of that. Because if there was nothing, that would be something.
well,
You can't get to the bottom of it.
well, but we technically don't believe that there's ever been a time with nothing in the one sense, because God has always been here. Like we believe there was no matter. There was a time with no matter. But we don't believe there was a time where nothing existed, including God. You know what I'm saying?
How do people that don't... I'd like to get an explanation of how do people who do not believe in the existence of an eternal being, a being who actually has the power of being...
It makes no sense.
Like the power of being. You understand what I'm saying? An eternal being. People who believe that doesn't exist, how do they get around the creation of matter? Like, how do they move from there being no matter to there being matter? Like, I would like to hear their explanation of that. Like,
there's a lot of things that I like to debate, but I've gotten to the point where, to me, that's so ridiculous to try to debate. Like, just whether or not there was a creator or not. Like, that's literally about the silliest thing you can try to conversate about. I mean, I know that's hard to say. It's like you should engage with people, but like, you can have a lot of debates on political topics that seem easy and plain to you, and you know, we think the parable about the kingdom of heaven is about, you know, we disagreed with that earlier. Like, you can have all kinds of debate. That one is a tough one to get started with, because it's real quick. It's like, well, that's impossible that something came from nothing, and then it's, well, no, it's this, and you're just like, well, I guess we're done. I mean, it's crazy. Like, how do you get started with engaging with that?
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, so in this miracle, why the reason it's such a huge deal is because we see the creative power of God manifested in real time in the performance of this miracle.
Yeah. In the presence of people.
Yeah, in the presence of people. Yep. And I sure do wish that Matthew would have been spent a little more time on this and been a little more descriptive about exactly how this played out. But what we get here is he had everybody sit down on the grass. He said there was about 5,000 people, I think. He took 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, he blessed and broke the bread and gave the loaves to his disciple, and the disciples to the multitudes, and they all ate and were filled, and they took up of the fragments or the leftovers that remained 12 baskets full of leftovers. And those that had eaten was about 5,000 men, besides women and children.
it's probably
so they
like 10,000 people or more. Like,
so he fed all of these people from 5 loaves. He started with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, and fed thousands upon thousands of people. And there was 12 baskets full of leftovers when it was done.
Well, it could have been all Matthew knew. It could have been like there was
That's
the
what
loaves
happened.
and the fish, and then
It could
there
have
was
disappeared.
like tons of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The creative power of God, the being who has the power of being, the being who can call things into existence, who has the power to create matter, the only being who can bring forth something out of nothing by his creative power that he possesses. It's pretty amazing, man.
I think it's interesting, not that this is silly to say, but obviously this is not the first time Jesus had compassion for the multitudes, but it's the first time that it was written like that. Like, he went alone, turned around, and then it says, like, distinctly, he had compassion for them. I wonder what was, I mean, once again, it's not like he hadn't before, but I wonder what was different about this one. You ever thought about that?
No, I hadn't. I will think about it, though. Guarantee
I don't
you
know.
that
It
much.
just, he was moved with compassion for them and started healing their sick just upon seeing them that time. I don't know. I mean, he's obviously not had the same exact reaction every time he went somewhere and the multitudes followed him. I just don't know you don't know the full circumstances or why exactly he decided to turn right then and do that instead of, maybe deliver a message.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Like he just started healing their sick and then fed them.
back in chapter 9 and 36, he did the same thing when he went about all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues, healing sickness and every disease among the people. But when he saw the multitudes, he was moved with compassion for them, for they were weary and scattered like sheep having no shepherd.
Yeah.
And maybe it's like here, these people probably also were followers of John the Baptist, and maybe they were weary and weak like a sheep with no shepherd because he was gone, and he was moved with compassion.
Too,
I see that.
You think about it, though.
Well, boys, I sure did enjoy this Monday meeting. I mean, you guys are good.
Well, chili's mainly good.
You guys are good, right?
Yeah, it's mainly chili.
All you guys are. Cornbread, you need a little work, all right? But you getting better.
Dang.
You're getting better. I mean, you didn't explain your interpretation.
I know you
of
got
those
so
parables,
mad at him for that.
As good as you should have, man.
That was my interpretation, bro. Blake brought up the slack.
I figured now that Corn's got a turkey under his belt, he'll get back into the word a little more now. So, all right, thank you guys. Lord willing, we'll see y'all next week, and drop us a comment here on Monday meeting if you're watching on YouTube. Join us on Patreon, man. We love to have you guys there. We did a message last night on Resurrected on Romans chapter 12. Really enjoyed it. Thank you guys again for tuning in. Nuff said.